Okay, we're ready to go. Another episode of Homes, Headaches, and Hijinks. I'm Murray, and this guy beside me has a lot of tools and no plan, and that is De Beers.
I like to wing it. That's just what I do. It's way better to wing it than it is to have a plan.
Apparently, he's extremely famous, and it's
so famous. I can't keep anyone off me.
The show has made him a superstar. Somehow,
oh yeah.
Somehow, I'm not getting the love, but apparently,
based on our reviews, I'm not sure yet. No, everyone's we gotta get some ramp up there. I think we've had a kind of game plan here going forward.
Yes, everyone that's listening, like, follow, and share.
Yes,
please.
Please.
Are we begging? I don't know. Maybe, but just like, follow, and share.
Yeah, exactly. If you like us, follow us, subscribe to us, click on us.
Yeah.
Do whatever you gotta do.
Whatever works.
Yeah.
We're funny, I think.
Sometimes.
Maybe to ourselves. we don't know. But anyways, Ryan, something that's been kind of weighing on me for the past couple of days is gas prices are obviously through the roof. I mean, Manitoba's not as bad as some. I've heard it's over like $2 a liter in some provinces, but we're sitting, I think, $1.72, and I think I've seen $1.76, something like that.
Yeah,
but, and there's always your discount gas places that'll have it cheaper. But I mean, just on average, let's say we're at $1.72, and I've seen people when the news have been interviewing, they said, "Go buy an EV," and I don't know that that's the fast and easy solution, because I don't think it's as cheap and as easy to do as everyone assumes.
Well, it's not. There's a lot of corrective measures to actually get the EV. I mean, there's obviously incentives for the EVs right now and stuff like that, provincially and federally, but you have to factor in where you're charging it, right? So are you charging it at a gas station? No. They do have the charging banks and stuff like that there, and some companies are putting EV, charging stations in.
How long? I never dug into that. How quick does those fast chargers? So if you got to stop at so you're going on a road trip, you got to stop at a gas station and sit there for 2 hours to charge your car.
Yeah, I've heard 45 minutes for X amount of kilometers. But if you're traveling long distance for the day, then you got to sit there for a couple hours to get it going, right? Yeah. But yeah, no, I think it's a good topic. I think it's a good thing to chat about today, because we are seeing the incentives, we are seeing the ramp up, and obviously gas prices, who knows if they're going back down again.
I'm sure they will. Probably will, but maybe not back down to $1.20.
But you have to factor in the key thing is your home equipped electrically to charge that vehicle.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. In Manitoba here, and Winnipeg, I can speak on a little more specific than Manitoba, but a lot of the houses have 100 amp panels or less. There's houses still that have 60, 70 amp panels.
Yeah.
And those definitely couldn't handle a charger.
No.
I think you might be able to get away with a 100 amp panel if you weren't running everything potentially. And just keep in mind, you can charge your EV with a regular plug, but it takes a billion hours. Apparently, you get 8 kilometers an hour.
It's very, very low
when you're charging it that way, right?
Yeah.
So you definitely want to put a better charger in. So first thing we need to factor in: can your electrical system handle a charger in your current house?
That's correct. So yeah, some 100 amp services can be equipped still with an EV charging station, depending on the amp load that you're wanting to get, because every charging station has a different ampacity and stuff like that. So you can go up to a 100 amp charging station, or you can go with a 30 or a 40 amp, and then also 60s and 80s, right?
Yeah,
so there's a huge range of what we can actually put into your house.
I want to say one of my buddies said he's got a 50 amp breaker for it.
Yeah. So that's a very common one, because you can kind of still dance around your amp load a little bit for your house. Now, if your house is equipped with a gas hot water tank, a gas furnace, some may or may not have ACs, right? So, if you're not, those 3 items there that can put a little bit more stress on your ampacity for your house, then sure, we can probably put a 50 amp charging station in a 100 amp service. Now we still have to juggle out and
don't turn your air conditioner on.
Don't turn your air conditioner on. We can still juggle it around, and we can try to make it work. 40s and 30s are more common on 100. Once we get into 50 plus, you're going to want to upgrade your panel. Now, that becomes expensive as well, because depending on overhead service, underground service, that also juggles a little bit of the price accordingly.
Yeah, and to just touch that for 1 sec, any of the new houses built in Winnipeg have 200 amps drawn to the
anything
house,
from like
right?
1970 to present is basically underground services.
Okay.
Very seldomly we see an overhead service on like in a 1970s plus home. Anything older than 1970, we are seeing overhead services still.
And
right?
those are all, they have to run a new wire, right, to the house?
So
It's not as simple as...
Hydro doesn't really care about their line.
Oh, okay.
Which is kind of crazy. You could put a 200 amp service on their cable that's already been there for 90 years, 100 years. They are not too worried about that. Sometimes they change it depending on if the cable has seen wear and tear to it and stuff like that. They will replace it, but most commonly they don't. They are relying on the electrician and the city of Winnipeg to approve the system with the proper rated cable and breaker up to their mast. So they're protecting their line by your house.
Okay.
So if it ever exceeded 200 amps, that breaker should trip in your home.
Yeah.
Right? That's what they're going with. So they're not really caring too much about their line.
Okay.
Okay. But anything from your service head down or underground is your responsibility as the homeowner. Anything that goes from the service point to their equipment, that's technically theirs, but they don't care about tree trimming and stuff like that anymore.
Okay.
So that's still your responsibility as a homeowner if it's overhead.
Okay. But most of the new houses, 200 amps ran underground to the house, but they only brought a 100 amp panel in. And I think they're still doing that on new builds, if I'm correct.
Which is, kind of, we're in that cusp line. I feel like I have seen some new homes with 150s, which is absurd to me. Like, why didn't you just go 200 amp at that point?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. There's a lot of... It's expensive. I mean, and some people don't want to pay that extra ticket item for, a service upgrade when they're like 100 amp is fine for my home. They don't really think of future. Like, I really have been hounding clients. Like, when you buy a house, and I've heard you talk about it as well when we go through homes together. Like, think of the future. Think 10, 15, 20 years down the road. If you guys are not thinking about being in that house for that long, then maybe a 100 amp panel is sufficient for you.
I always ask people what their future plans are.
Like, what's your goals,
right?
You're
going to do this, you're going to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're thinking like long-term goals and you're thinking about an EV, you're thinking about a hot tub, you're thinking about all that stuff, pay that price once. Like, don't change the panel out, because sometimes we have to change panels out because we have double tap breakers and stuff like that. Or
I can't remember when we built our house, but the builder, it was a significant upgrade to go to a 200 amp service. I did it because of everything we were doing in the house, but a lot of people don't do it. And I have a buddy who just got an EV.
Yeah.
He's all excited about his EV. And then he's like, yeah, but it cost me $5,000 because he had to upgrade his service. Now he does have a pool, a hot tub. He's got a lot of things going on, but even after he upgraded his service, he's got his whole basement floor heated with electric heat. And the electrician basically said, you shouldn't run that.
No.
He's drawing between his EV, his pool, his air conditioner, all the stuff that you need to run just to keep your house proper. He's like, don't run your heated floors. You're going to max out your system.
Yeah. And that's a common occurrence that's happening, which is why we have to do upgrades, right? 200 amp is the biggest service size you can get in Winnipeg without paying additional costs. You can get 400s. But that's if you're running. But that's if you're running a business out of your home and stuff like that, and you need that extra power, welding plugs and whatever in your garage, or if you're a woodworker or stuff like that. That's the only time you would ever consider exceeding 200 amps. 200 amps is sufficient enough for most loads going forward, hot tub, EV, stuff like that. But yeah, it comes with a cost. Like you're ranging anywhere from $4,000 to $6,000 depending on the home.
Just to upgrade your panels.
Yeah.
So let's look at that cost right there. $4,000 to $6,000 just to upgrade so you can charge your vehicle properly. Now, you have to buy a charger.
Well, that's not including the charging station.
Yeah,
right?
So you got to buy a charger, right? But I've heard you can just throw a 220 or 240, whatever they call it.
Yep.
Just a dryer plug essentially in your garage, and that should charge it. Do you know if there's risks on that?
The only risks I have is certain EV vehicles out there right now have, that circuit board and stuff like that that's inside that charging station that, if anything was to
kill a surge and stuff, right?
So if we see a spike, it's not going to put a hiccup on your batteries of your vehicle, which, again, are very expensive to replace.
Yeah.
I think I have heard in the news and stuff like that, some guys are, getting that warranty package with their vehicle. vehicle's off warranty. Well, batteries are toast, and they're paying like 20 grand for new batteries in the vehicle, right? So, the proper charging station, that's equipped for that vehicle is definitely a recommendation going forward. The right
move. So now you're looking at another 1,500 to 2 grand, right? So we're at 10. Well, no, sorry, we're at 8 grand roughly, right? Before you can even charge your vehicle, you're roughly at 8 grand. Now, do it however you want, but this is just the logic behind of how we're kind of taking a look at this. And then EVs cost more than a regular vehicle, right? They're 10 to 15 grand, maybe 20, depending what you're buying. I'm sure if you're going to buy some high-end Audi or something like that, you're definitely paying more, way more, right? Yeah. But on average, I think, my discussions I had with Chat about this were, and not that Chat's always right, but the discussions we had was something like 10 to 20 grand, depending on what you're buying. So I quickly looked at Hyundai just to see what they had, and they had a car, and it was 65 grand. Yeah. And that was a car.
That was a car.
Or sorry. No, yeah, the car was 65, and the SUV was a little bit more, maybe, so something like that. Anyways, whatever the case is, the car was more than if I was to go buy a Honda Civic. Yep. It was costing me more money, right?
Well, yeah. And then you get some incentives with those vehicles right now, which are good and bad. So provincially, there's the incentive program going on right now, but it ends March 31st of this year. So if you don't have your vehicle registered with MPI, the only way to get the rebate is to register your vehicle with MPI before March 31st.
Okay.
So if you don't, I think you lose out 4 grand or something.
Yeah, I think provincial was 4, federal's 5, and this is up to though. So I didn't dig into.
You have to qualify for that. Right?
Yeah, I didn't dig into the rules.
It's no different than them throwing the GM truck event or the Ford truck event and stuff like that. They throw all these incentives, up to 15 to 20K, but when you actually go in there and you start like wheeling and dealing on that vehicle, are you really actually seeing that 10 to 15K off that price? Certain vehicles do, you have to have this, and this in order to qualify.
Well, I think on the Hyundai site there, it said something about 11 grand rebate factored in, and plus you can qualify for 5 more grand. I don't know. Yeah. Whatever the case is, I just think that factor in that as well into your price. So, now we've got, call it 5 grand for a panel just to be fine. Call it 1,500 for a charging station to be, to buy. So you're at $6,500.
Yeah.
Plus you've got now another 10 to 15 grand for ease. We're going to say 10 grand. Yeah. So we're at $16,500 before that car even parks in your garage. And people that own condos, this might not be as simple. A lot of condos have outdoor parking. And I know they have
and then you have to get approval from the board. You have to get, because you're not tampering just with your electrical, you're tampering with,
But I got to imagine an outdoor station costs more than one that you put in your garage. Because it's got to be protected from the environment.
When I was a full-time electrician working for a couple outfits there, we did a few of those big charging stations early on when they first kind of came out, especially Porsche dealership. We did a few there. They weren't cheap. This charging station alone was $10,000+, right? So I can't imagine in a condo exterior, right? Indoor condos, I've seen a lot more indoor condos will have charging stations. I'm assuming the owners have paid for them, but they're there. And I did have one young couple that one of the condos I was selling came to me and they're like, well, is there a charging station? And I'm like, no. And they're like, well, is your client paying for that? And I'm like, nope, your EV needs is not my client's problem. And they couldn't wrap their head around the fact that my client wasn't going to cover that. And I'm like, that's your problem, not my client's problem. And it was crazy to me. And I knew what these people were getting at is just it's expensive to deal with this. Well, it's funny you get into that talk too with condos and apartments and stuff like that, because, I still am in good talks with a lot of guys I used to work with and stuff like that have actually gone into their own businesses as well. And one of the chats were, amp demand on these condo buildings and apartment buildings. Yeah. It wasn't just a matter of, they want, the condo board came at them and was like, hey, we're thinking about doing this upgrade. They didn't factor in the fact that they have to change transformers, they have to change panels, they have to change a lot of the internal components of these condo buildings in order to suffice the amp demand on these vehicles. Because now they have to think about it. Maybe not everyone right away is going to use these chargers, but at one time we might be using these chargers. So you have to factor in the amp demand that's going to be coming through those charging stations. Yep. Maybe not in 1 year from now, but in 5 years from now, right? So you want to do it all right once. You don't want to do it backwards and then try to retrace your steps and then, happen to have some hiccups in their electrical system, that's going to cause a blackout, right? So
everyone loses power.
And that can happen.
This is the concern too. Can our grid in Canada right now handle it?
No.
Right? So how does everyone jump on an EV bandwagon when they can? I don't think there's anything wrong with them. I've got a couple buddies that have them, and man, they're fast, which is good and bad.
The electric motor is like one of the quickest inrush currents you can get.
Depending who's driving it, it's good and bad, right?
Yeah.
I know my one buddy said his wife loves it because she stomps on the gas pedal and it's like, poof,
Yeah.
we're gone.